All right, so here is von der Leyen saying at the World Economic Forum saying that
the European Union produced more electricity from sun and wind.
Okay, saying that the EU has produced more electricity from sun and wind. Interestingly enough, right, Donald Trump says these ideas are, they're less efficient. So if you take a look, the top 3 nations or top 4 nations here that have switched over, these are EU nations that have switched over or denuclearized, right? Well, the ideology of denuclearizing ended in 2020 when Ukraine was attacked by Russia because they did not possess nuclear weapons. So it's been 4 years now, so pretty much everyone who doesn't have nuclear weapons should, right, probably acquire some for defense. The nuclear deterrent would have stopped Ukraine from being invaded and their people from being slaughtered. Understanding this is also going to play a role in costs, right? When we're seeing these high costs of electricity generation, if you look at the bottom here, Hungary is 0.104, and it may not seem like much of a difference, but Germany is 0.384. Let me zoom in here so you guys can see. It may not seem like much of a difference, but just for Italy here, if Italy can bring its costs down to Hungary's costs, Hungary uses PAC nuclear, the estimated savings for Italy is going to be about $44 billion a year. Okay, so Trump, he says, in about 3 weeks, we're going to start building a nuclear power plant, or maybe he's suggesting that they'll have the necessary permits to build a nuclear power plant, something like that. But understanding that when you see someone else setting the bar for speed, that's the bar you've got to try and beat it, right? No one wants to finish 7th place in a race. Nobody remembers who finishes 7th place in a race. So if you look down here, right, Hungary uses nuclear, and so maybe doing some research, calling them up, right? Whatever, figuring out how to get energy costs down, because $44 billion a year, that's a lot of money. And also, right, so this is going to trickle through into the costs of living, right, for every citizen in the nation, right? And so understanding that the Adam Smith Wealth of Nations, invisible hand, right, if people have the finances, right, they have the motive, but also if they have the finances in their pocket to build, they will build, right? They will be investing in the stock market. If Germany's stock market is booming or Italy's stock market is booming, people will be talking about that, right? There's hordes of people in asset management, wealth management, guiding people's finances where they ought to be, right? And the further we go along, the easier it is for people to invest globally, right? The closer the nations become in trade, the faster means of travel, transportation will become, etc., etc., etc. So understanding that, well, while this may not look like much or look like it's very important, these nations, over the long term, they're not going to be able to remain competitive with the nations down here as long as, right, the foundation is established. I was going to do a video on that. That's probably the most important one. Getting your people in the mindset of, we got to build, we got to stay competitive, and understanding, right, there is a work-life balance, but in 4 days, people can put in 60 hours of work in 4 days and take 3 days off. Okay, so the potential for work is a lot higher than what the vast majority of people are living out, and honestly, their lives would be a lot happier if they worked more. Okay, so those were the energy costs for Italy. This also is going to be the oil cost for Italy, right? And so if Italy's paying a little bit too much for their oil, here are some other ones. The Netherlands and Denmark maybe make sense because they're a little bit further away geographically, but this level of difference is not correct. Same with Italy. Okay, so Italy's geographic region is right next to Italy. Sort of has the potential to become sort of a powerhouse of trade for Europe. So understanding that's going to be important. Any of these nations that are down on the bottom here, Greece not being able to really have an economic boom, it's incorrect. And so understanding that these nations that are port nations, right, they can travel by sea, etc., they have the ability to trade with pretty much the oil titans, right? So understanding that, just by looking at that and seeing that Italy's costs are high, you can tell that there's something not right here. So this would be a yearly estimated savings of, it's probably well over 8 billion a year for Italy. And so taking this into account and making sure that your nation is competitive, right? Looking line by line at items in which it is not competitive and making sure to see if you can address those it concerns is going to be important going forward, right? Again, right, nobody wants to finish 7th place in a race. And so, right, wind tends to be the most expensive. Then it is, and nuclear is the cheapest, is what it looks like, just at a glance, right? And Hungary, right, reflects that. So, yeah, taking the time to go through areas in which you're paying for example, energy, that's going to be a big one, clothing, footwear, furniture, things that everybody uses, right? It may not seem that important, right? But when you break down the costs of what everyone is paying out of pocket, even a 1% or 2% increase, like overpay, like if Hungary is paying $10 a meal, for example, and Germany's paying 12, right? It may not seem like that much of a cost, but actually those costs rack up real quick. And so understanding that, doing a line-by-line item analysis of each nation, USA, EU, any nation, and doing your best to figure out what can be done. I've been going over looking at taxation and laws, things like that, and understanding that, right, if the foundation is good, right, if you're keeping the foundation of a nation up to date, I think I just saw this is going to be Trump, U.S. officially exits the World Health Organization, right? So you have to understand that maybe the goal of the organization is not that important, but it is likely that they're fighting corruption. And so Trump and the USA cabinet, Trump's cabinet, are exiting these nations, right? So getting out of corrupt nations, you could pretty much follow suit with the USA at this point, and you'd be in pretty good shape. I think they left 31 UN nations, and right, Trump is founding the Board of Peace, things like that. So understanding that, getting these fees down, right, they're yearly fees. So, over 1 year, $100 million loss might not seem like much, but actually, right, if you get that foundation running smooth in your nation, if you get everything working well, you will start thriving and excelling very, very quickly. We're seeing a sort of economic boom currently in the U.S. it's sort of unprecedented. People didn't think it was possible to acquire that much wealth so quickly, but lo and behold, the Trump administration is drastically raising the bar, and so if they can raise the bar, so can every nation in the world.